Shall we make a start as we passed a minute past? Yes, let's go for it. So,
absolutely.
Official welcome to this IFT British Section Learning Spotlight webinar. And today we're going to talk about AI and whether AI can support your research, and a very important point that it cannot replace your judgment. So for this exciting topic, we're delighted to have with us today Rhianna Gamble, who was head of marketing and engagement at IFIS, and Rhianna will say a few words about her in a second. If you have any question, and we hope you do, please put them in the Q&A section, and then we will address them at the end. So the Q&A functions for your questions. So Rhianna, would you like to showtime? Would you like to start?
Thanks, Bertrand. Thank you everyone for joining. So as Bertrand said, I'm Rhianna Gamble. I am my day job. I'm head of marketing and engagement at IFIS, and I'm the chair of IFT's British Section. And hi, Sam. And hi everybody who's online. Bertrand, is there a problem? I heard you say ooh.
I think we lost you for a second at the connection.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, how strange. Okay.
Yeah.
My internet looks fine. Are you hearing me okay now?
I can hear you okay now, yeah.
Okay. If anyone does have any technical issues, please just pop them in the chat, and we'll try our best to help with that. Okay, so today's session is about how to use AI tools responsibly and effectively in your research. It's not an anti-AI session. It can be genuinely very useful, but as the title says, it's not a replacement for your literature search, your interpretation, your judgment, your authorship, or your responsibility. So the session poses a practical question. How can you use AI as a research assistant without outsourcing the parts of research that must remain yours? And we're going to cover quite a lot of ground here, as you can see in the agenda, but there should be time at the end for questions. I'm going to start with just a very quick explanation of who IFIS is and how AI relates to what we do. And then we'll go into where AI fits into the information research workflow, why it's become so popular, usage trends in universities, risks to research integrity, using the right tool for the job, what it's useful for, what it shouldn't be used for, and why. Some questions that you can ask any AI output. We'll look at AI answers versus discoveries, some real examples of hallucinated information, some guidance around how to coach judgment over trying to kind of catch people cheating using it, how you can use AI to in the process of writing your abstracts, and also ethics and transparency, disclosure, publisher expectations, privacy, unpublished material, etc., and the practical decision framework. So, as I say very briefly, IFIS is a not-for-profit publisher and an educational charity working in food, nutrition, and health information. We produce FSTA, Food Science Technology Abstracts, and that database has been going since the 1960s. It was a book back then. It's an online tool now. And we also produce NutriHealth, which applies our information expertise in a more health-facing context. We're a mission-driven organisation, and our perspective is shaped by literature searching, indexing, source quality, discoverability, and research communication. So to start off, I'm going to summarise where AI fits into the information research workflow. There are people online today could be from universities, food companies, government. You're at different stages of your careers from a range of countries. So I've tried to make this workflow as generic as I can, while still useful, to try to make it applicable to as many of you as I can. And then we're going to explore these areas in more detail. So it's a practical workflow outlining where it can add value to your early stage research and discovery process. It can be very useful at the start of a project when you're exploring a topic, help you generate possible angles, related terms and questions. Start by using AI for orientation. Ask it to suggest possible concepts, but then extract the claims, the assumptions, the terms that it gives you. Check the terms. Are they what's actually being used in the literature? Are they synonyms? Are they broader and narrower concepts? Are they controlled terms and specialist resources? But then you need to move into proper discovery. Don't rely on the AI answer as the evidence base. depending on what you have available to you at your institution, that can mean using library resources, specialist databases, certainly transparent search strategies to find actual evidence. And once you have the evidence, you need to verify it. Does it actually exist, the source? Is it reliable? Is it relevant? Does it actually support the claim? And you still need to make the scholarly decisions. Is it the right type of source for your task? Is it current enough? Is it direct evidence, useful context, adjacent literature? Is it actually out of scope? Does the paper actually support the claim you want to make? So going to those library resources, it reduces the risk of unreliable sources, but it doesn't remove the need for your judgment. They simply give you a stronger evidence environment in which to make it. Record your search strategy. It's especially important if you're doing a PhD. If your search process is challenged later, you need to be able to explain what you searched, where you searched, what terms you used and why. Read before citing. Don't cite something just because it came up in an AI summary. Don't cite it just because the title looks relevant. You need to read enough to really understand the method, context, limitations, and contribution. And then you interpret. That's your work. AI can't take responsibility for your interpretation. And write in your own voice. AI can be great for helping you refine wording, but the thinking needs to be yours. And your voice, your ability to express your ideas creatively, that really stands out to readers. And finally, if you're using AI, document it. That makes disclosure easier, protects you if questions are asked later, which they may well be. So that is an incredibly high-level workflow where AI fits into that. It's useful at different stages when used appropriately. So one reason that AI is so appealing is the user experience. It's fast, it's conversational, it's really low friction. And by comparison, doing like structured information searching, it can feel more demanding. It asks users to think about the terms, scope, sources, and relevance. And I think it's really important that we're honest about that AI tools often feel easier and easier can feel better. And there's nothing inherently wrong with convenience. Sometimes like a ready meal, it's exactly what you need. But when the outcome matters, you need a nutritionally complete meal. Or in our context, you're building a literature review, you're supporting a grant application, then speed and convenience are not going to be the most important measures. So making information research better doesn't necessarily mean making the first step feel easier, but it does mean better outcomes. Evidence that's more trustworthy, transparent, relevant, and better aligned to the questions you're asking. So with that ease and convenience in mind, it's unsurprising that generative AI tools like ChatGPT and Perplexity, even Google's AI overviews are now a very common starting point for research. I appreciate not everyone online today is in education. However, the information and statistics that I'm going to share over the next few slides are really indicative of wider usage trends, and I think you'll still find them interesting and useful. At IFIS, because of the work we do, we're speaking with university faculty and librarians very regularly. We're hearing two consistent themes. Firstly, that students are increasingly beginning research journey in ChatGPT rather than the university library, treating it as their first and sometimes only source of information, which is obviously very concerning. And that work is being submitted with fabricated references from AI, often without realising that those citations don't actually exist. An academic library that we spoke to, who specialised in systematic reviews, said to us that when they were checking student work, they found several references that he couldn't locate anywhere, and they turned out to be completely fake. I'm sure it's something that you're all familiar with. The data confirms it's a growing issue. A 2024 survey by ACRL, the Association of College and Research Libraries, found that over 75% of librarians cited generating false citations as an urgent problem. And a recent policy note from the UK think tank HEPI noted that 88% of students were using generative AI for assessments in 2025, and that was up from 53% the previous year, so a huge increase. HEPI also did a survey of student attitudes in 2025, and that the survey results demonstrated that most students are now using generative AI, and many were using it in assignments. But at the same time, students say AI skills are essential, but only about a third of them were reporting receiving support from the institution. Policies are becoming clearer, staff confidence is growing, but there's a kind of a delivery gap when it comes to training students when they're learning how to find information and to do it and to find reliable information. And that's why it's so important to build a culture of AI literacy, verification habits, and knowing how to get from AI brainstorming through to vetted citable evidence. So it's very clear that generative AI is being widely used, but what really matters is how it's being used. Two problems keep showing up. First, misuse, those citations that look plausible but don't exist, or they contain quiet errors that no one spots till it's too late. And second, a critical thinking gap where people aren't consistently asking, where did this come from? Is it current? Who says so? Our job isn't to push the tide back, it's to channel it. At IFIS, we position generative AI as a starting point, but with an emphasis that verification sources is absolutely essential. And framing it this way really encourages judgment rather than like polices its use. The outcome is better research and better scholarship, having claims that are traceable, citations that are real, and also the development of critical thinking skills. And the discussion is no longer confined to library and scholarly communication circles. I think concerns about fabricated citations, fake authors, paper mills, AI-generated papers and manipulated scholarly records are really moving into wider public debate. So useful way to think about AI is not to think of it as good or bad, but rather what task am I asking it to do? It can be really useful for some tasks. It can help you to brainstorm ideas, generate possible search terms, prepare an outline, improve a paragraph, translate and rephrase your text, or check whether your structure is clear. And I think it's important to recognise that when it's used right, it's a really helpful tool that can enrich educational outcomes. It can really help you to spark ideas, especially when you're staring at a blank page, reduce that just kind of that fear of getting started barrier by generating like first angles and outlines, keyword lists, and then you can begin moving and refine it. And then that can free up time for critical reading and comparison and synthesis. That's why it's so important to position it as a starting point and not as an endpoint. Let it help overcome the initial friction, and then you shift into vetted resources for evidence and citation. So I've managed to accidentally include a second version of this slide, so my apologies for that. So here are just some examples. So that getting over that fear to start bump, generating the angles. There's an example we've shared here, which is a student exploring fermentation optimization and plant-based dairy alternatives. They might want to use an AI tool to generate a list of possible angles, such as enzyme selection, microbial interactions, and sensory implications. Another thought is that it can help you think of related concepts that you might not have considered. So, for example, if you ask an AI tool, what does literature say about food security? The answer could be very helpful. It can define the concept, mention themes such as hunger and climate change, conflict, food policy, supply chains, agricultural productivity, policy interventions. That's really useful orientation. It gives the user language. It helps you to see the broad territory. Generative AI tools can be incredibly useful for helping you improve the clarity and checking the structures clear, and the translation and rephrasing. And we're going to come back to that later in the talk when we're looking at how you can use your abstract, use AI when you're working on your abstract. Ultimately, using AI effectively, it can support efficiency to free up time for your critical reading, comparison and synthesis. So that AI response can really help you understand the topic and get started. But it's not the same as evidence. The generated overview doesn't automatically tell you which sources were used. It doesn't tell you which sources were missed or whether the literature has been searched systematically. It doesn't tell you whether a statement is supported by a peer-reviewed paper, a policy document, a blog post, or is it a pattern and training data. And the benefits that we've just looked at, they only hold with scaffolding and verification. Without that, the same features become liabilities. The brainstorm being treated as a conclusion, errors creeping and unchecked, and citations are often the first place that problems surface. The peer-reviewed scientific report study by Walters and Wilder, and this is back in 2023 now, but I think it's still very interesting. They found that GPT 3.5 fabricated 55% of citations and 43% of its real citations had major errors. GPT-4 fabricated 18% and 24% of the real citations had major errors. And this is really why fast citation and verification are, fast citation triage and verification are so essential. But other parts of the research process require a different standard than when you're doing that first orientation piece. AI shouldn't replace a literature search. It shouldn't decide which sources are trustworthy, whether evidence is relevant, It shouldn't interpret your findings or generate the scientific substance of your work and have you pass it off on as your own. And depending on what you're using the information for, you do still need to locate authoritative sources, verify claims, read literature, evaluate whether it's actually relevant, and build your argument. So a really good rule of thumb is this: use AI to support efficiency, clarity, and reflection. I would absolutely encourage you to treat AI outputs not as proven knowledge, but rather as like hypotheses or prompts to investigate. Don't use it to outsource evidence, interpretation, or responsibility. That word responsibility is absolutely key here. AI is excellent at producing confident, coherent sounding responses. That is very different from answers built on a robust evidence base. So, of course, you need to critically evaluate anything that comes out of an AI tool, just like you would any other source. And here is a simple checklist that you can use whenever an AI tool has given you information. So first, what was the source? Has that tool provided a citation, a link, or a reference? Second, is there evidence for the claim? If you did receive a citation with that information, can you find it in a library database or Google Scholar? If you can find it, does it actually say what the AI tool says it says? Third, how current is the information? That matters a lot in fields like health, nutrition, food technology. Fourth, could the answer be biased or incomplete? Does it reflect only a mainstream view? Does it miss regional evidence? Does it simplify a contested debate? And fifth, have you verified it in a reliable source? If you can't confirm something with credible evidence, don't include it in your work. It's a simple rule, but it will protect you from many of the most common AI-related mistakes. Over the next few slides, I'm going to explore these in more detail using our expertise as a database publisher and educational charity. Now, information discovery is our bread and butter at IFIS. As I say, we've been doing this since the 1960s. So I'm going to talk about what AI-generated responses look like and some of the factors affecting what information you see in your results and how that contrasts to more traditional research tools. Most discussions about AI focus on hallucinations, and we're going to come to that, but there is a deeper issue for research, and that's how evidence is actually surfaced. When you ask an AI tool a research question, it might give you a fluent, confident answer. As we've seen, the answer can be very useful for orientation. But as I mentioned before, you often can't see what sources shaped it, what they excluded, what was prioritized, how relevance was judged. You might not know whether a source is appearing because it's the most relevant, the most cited, the most visible online, the most recent, or simply most aligned with the learned patterns of the system that you're using. In AI-mediated search or general web search, the ranking and the selection logic can be opaque. And similarly, Google Scholar can be useful, but it also has ranking systems that aren't fully transparent to the researcher. Highly cited and highly visible work can dominate. English language and Western sources can be easier to surface. Some sources might be visible because they're indexed, optimized, or linked just in particular ways. And all of this matters because research isn't just about getting the answer. You also need to be able to explain how you found the evidence. That doesn't mean you should never use broad tools, but it means you need to understand what they are and what they're not. Research databases work differently. They give you more control. Because they retrieve records, you can inspect them. The author's journal, publication date, abstract, indexing terms, source metadata. You can apply filters, you can repeat your search, you can document what you did. You can use your judgment to define inclusion, exclusion criteria. And that's why library resources are still important in the age of AI. They don't just give you content, it's a more transparent route through the evidence landscape. And it matters because a literature review is not just a list of papers, it's a defensible account of how you engaged with the evidence. One of the 5 questions to ask about any AI output was about whether it was biased or incomplete. We saw that in the factors affecting results, that one of the things happened with AI-generated search results is that English language sources tend to dominate. So I want to talk a bit more about that because bibliodiversity is incredibly important for your research to be effective. And bibliodiversity means paying attention to whose research is visible, whose research is discoverable, and whose research is excluded or harder to find. In food, nutrition, and health, this matters because research is global and it's context specific. Local diets, crops, regulations, public health priorities, processing methods, food systems, they all vary enormously. If your search misses regional journals, non-English language research, grey literature, locally relevant interventions, your review might not just be incomplete, it can be skewed. And that matters for systematic reviews, grant proposals, policy work, thesis literature reviews. A discovery system that privileges only the most visible sources can shape what you think the field looks like, and it can make some knowledge really easy to find and other knowledge almost invisible. In AI-mediated discovery, users may not know why certain sources were surfaced and others weren't. So there's a risk that visibility is shaped by algorithmic prominence rather than scientific relevance, regional importance, or evidential value. It's another reason why library resources matter. They can make those deliberate choices about source inclusion, indexing, subject relevance, and regional coverage. It doesn't solve every problem, but it does make the discovery process more intentional and more transparent so that you're able to answer the question of whose knowledge is represented. I mentioned before about understanding how relevance is judged. This is another place where human judgment is essential. A system might be able to identify that a source is connected to your topic, but as a researcher, you still have to ask connected how. The research process requires you to judge whether the evidence is genuinely relevant, not merely adjacent. A simple example to put it into context is the word culture. In food science, that could mean microbial starter cultures used in fermentation, cell culture in biotechnology, food culture, and social and behavioural sense. The word is the same, but the evidence landscape is completely different. Relevance depends on the domain, the application, and the question that's being asked. The source can mention food security without being useful evidence for your question. Policy report can provide valuable context, but not evidence for nutritional outcomes. Sustainability paper might be related to food security, but be out of scope for review on food deserts. So the relevance question isn't just, does the source mention my topic? It's, does the source help answer this specific question for this population in this context using an appropriate method and outcome? So AI can be really helpful for triaging, clustering, and summarizing. But at the point where something is accepted as evidence, someone needs to understand the research purpose and make a defensible decision. And that someone is you. And if you need help, do talk to your colleagues, talk to your supervisor, your library, depending on what your role is. The community around you are all vital partners. So how big of a problem are fabricated and hallucinated references? This is a fascinating topic. Sorry. So you might be familiar with the 2026 Lancet audit led by Maxim Topaz and colleagues. They examined about 2.5 million biomedical papers. They verified 97.1 million references and identified over 4,000 fabricated citations across over 2,800 papers. Fabricated citations rising more than 12-fold since 2023. It's not a reason to avoid ever using AI or telling people don't use it, but it is a reason why it's so essential to understand the difference between generated text and verifiable evidence. It reflects what many faculty are feeling. A US professor that we spoke to recently told us she was considering a rule that students can only use information that they have accessed through the library because in her view, they don't yet have the discernment to know that something's trustworthy. So this example here, this case study example, it's a real example from our own workflow at IFIS, and I wanted to include it to demonstrate just how hard it can be to spot false citations and show why a detailed analysis can be necessary. So we asked an AI tool to reorder a real bibliography by relevance. And it quietly inserted this extra reference. We didn't ask it to, it just appeared. On screen, it looks perfect. Real journal. The volume and issue look realistic. And the article number looks like a Wiley article number. So it took us a few minutes to verify it. We checked the journal table of contents for that issue. No such article existed. We checked the title and cross-ref. The exact title returns no record. That's typical when a citation is fabricated. And why it's so persuasive is that, as well as being a real journal title, the article title stitches together very common starch phrases. Functional, physicochemical, morphological, dual modification. They frequently appear in genuine starch research papers, so it sounds right, even when it's not. And the 22000206 pattern mimics Wiley's article number style. So this shows very clearly how AI can copy format convincingly while inventing content. And the key point here is that even when a citation passes a quick kind of eye test, verification beats the kind of the vibe, the way you feel about it. And that's exactly why we coach a fast, repeatable check. And here's another example. But again, at first glance, it looks credible. The title sounds academic. The authors look plausible. Journal title sounds real. There is a volume. There's something that looks like a DOI. but none of that information actually proves that the reference exists. And this is why AI hallucinations are dangerous in academic work, because they don't always look fake. They often look exactly like the kind of reference you expect to see. This is a real hallucination generated by ChatGPT. And as I say, at first glance, looks completely plausible. So the question isn't, does it look scholarly? Does it look like it's from a peer-reviewed journal? The question is, can I verify it? So can I find the paper in the library's database? Does the DOI resolve? Does the journal exist? Does the source actually support the claim that the AI tool made? And that's the difference between a fluent answer and an evidence base. A fluent answer can help you think. Evidence is something that you can locate, inspect, read, and cite responsibly. The next few slides are going to be most useful for educators working with students, but I hope and I think everyone will take something away from it. As an educational charity, we firmly believe our role is to coach judgment, not catch cheats. We've talked about how quickly generative AI has become part of the information research process and how easily errors can slip in. Institutions are increasingly rolling out detectors, and there are plenty of tells, things like just a shift in the writing voice or analysis being at a very shallow level, phrases just seem a bit odd, and most often fabricated citations, as we've already touched on. We're increasingly seeing faculty members adapting their approach to assignments, introducing elements like oral defences, in-class annotation, and iterative drafts with verification logs. And anecdotally, some lecturers have even gone to lengths like using hidden white text or hiding text behind images to catch copy-paste. Those tactics can help, but the most scalable, reliable check is the reference list, because as I mentioned before, citations are where problems surface first. But as I say, rather than set traps, we recommend an ethos of critical thinking and coaching verification so that people can trust their own work. To make this stick, assignments can be shaped to reward the right steps. So for example, you could allow students to use AI for the ideation stage, but then ask them to submit a short verification log and a reflection. So which claim changed after you checked the evidence? This way, the reflection often becomes part of the learning. They see how a confident sentence from a chatbot can turn into a nuanced statement after reading two proper studies. And they feel the difference between having an answer and having evidence. We've also created this simple 4-step checklist. It's designed to build verification habits and support the production of credible work. So we start where trust lives. You've got the library system, whether that's within your university, your company, your government agency, quick search and discovery tool, or a link resolver often confirms whether a record actually exists. For the head of print, you'll usually see an online publication date without a volume or issue. That's fine. If the only hit is a preprint, cite that. Just don't imply that it's peer reviewed. You've also got the journal, the publisher's journal page. If it isn't listed in expected volume and issue, you can check the tabs that you know well. Your articles in press, early view, online first, etc. Many journals post articles before assigning issues. Then you've got the DOI, cross-ref, as the source of truth handshake. The DOI should resolve to the publisher page. The metadata must match exactly. Title, author's journal. If it doesn't resolve or it lands on something different, that's a red flag. And finally, a quick exact title search on the open web. That serves as a sanity check, and it can catch copy paste typos or oddities. We recommend going to the library first because it teaches the habit we actually want. Evidence lives in vetted systems. The rest of the steps are there to handle those kind of edge cases efficiently, especially if it's ahead of print, and to separate convincing format mimicry from real existence. This table here shows some of the most common red flags to be aware of. So what the red flag looks like, how you can do a quick 30-second check, where you should go to check, what the risk is, and what action to take. So for example, if it looks plausible but the metadata is off, what that looks like is things like the journal name being real, like we saw in that earlier example, but then things like the author or the article information is mismatched. DOI not resolving to the record. So what you can do then, open that issue on the publisher site, do a comparison there, try that DOI resolver. The risk of this, if the risk of this red flag is high, if the metadata can't be consulted, can't be verified, treat it as fabricated and misattributed and don't include it. So now let's move on from finding evidence to communicating your research. Abstracts are a very useful case study with this because they show exactly where AI can help you and where it can harm. Authors often underestimate the abstract, but the abstract is how many people decide whether a paper is worth reading. Professor John O'Brien, founding editor of Trends in Food Science Technology, said to us that for many readers, it may be both the starting point and the end point. And that means your abstract is not just a summary of your research, it's a discovery tool, it's a persuasion tool. It frames the problem, it signals what's novel, highlights the key finding, explains why the work that you've done matters. So AI is great for helping you refine your abstract. It can help you make it clearer, shorter, and better structured, but it shouldn't decide the story of your research. That story depends on your science, your results, your interpretation, and your communication skills. And editors care about that. They're not only looking for grammatical fluency, they're looking for clarity of contribution. They want to understand what you did, what you found, why it matters, and why your paper deserves attention. And all of that requires your voice. So in other words, AI can be very useful when you already know what you want to say. It can help you improve that clarity, reduce word count. That's something I find very helpful. It can remove repetition. It can check whether the structure flows. It can identify sentences that are too dense or they're unclear and help you test whether the purpose, the result, and the significance are visible in what you've said. Those are all very legitimate support tasks where AI is really useful, but it shouldn't generate the scientific content. It shouldn't invent results or make your conclusions stronger than the data allows. It shouldn't decide what is novel or interpret your findings for you. It shouldn't add implications that you've not supported or make the abstract sound more impressive at the cost of accuracy. One of the risks with AI-generated papers is that they can become very vague and generic. They can sound polished but lose the specificity or flatten the novelty. They can remove the author's analytical perspective and really just make abstracts all sound the same. It's not just a writing problem, that's a credibility problem as well, because your abstract needs to communicate your contribution, not just sound like academic prose. So here is a safer workflow for how to use AI in the process of creating your abstracts. So first, write the abstract yourself. It doesn't need to be perfect. It can be rough, but it does need to have come from you, because that first draft forces you to decide what matters. What's the purpose? What method did you use? What did you find? What was new? Why does it matter? And then use AI for refinement. So you might ask, improve clarity without changing meaning, or reduce this to 250 words without changing meaning. Highlight unclear sections, or ask it, does this abstract clearly state the results? Or have I explained the significance? Using prompts like that keep you in control. And then after any AI-assisted edit, check for drift, because drift is when AI changes the meaning without you noticing it. And it might add a claim, it could remove a limitation or soften an important result, but it could also overstate the significance. It can make the writing seem smoother, but less accurate. Finally, do an edit in your own voice. Your abstract should sound like a clear version of your thinking, not like generic AI output. And if the journal supervisor or university requires disclosure, make sure you disclose it. People often ask, isn't using AI cheating? The most honest answer is it depends what you claim and what the policy is for whatever you're using it for. If a chatbot suggested keywords, say so. If you quoted an AI sentence, cite it according to the style guide. If you used AI to brainstorm but built your argument on peer-reviewed literature, you've done what researchers have always done, starting broad, verifying, then citing. The rule of thumb that we share is simple, which is own your process. Transparency isn't a trap, it's how you demonstrate academic integrity. So if you're using a generative AI tool to create academic material, whether that's an assignment or an article for publication, the use should be explicitly stated. Many universities and publishers have explicit policies around it. You should record the name of the tool, the developer or company, the version, the date you used it, the person who used it, and the purpose of use. Where possible, you should keep details of the prompts in your responses. And this is much easier if you keep a simple AI use log as you work. You don't need anything complicated. A simple table is enough. Date, tool, purpose, prompt, output used, how it was checked, where it was disclosed. And this protects you in two ways. It helps you comply with whatever policy you need to comply with. And second, it helps you reconstruct your own process. You can show what was your work, what was AI assisted, and how you checked it. And that matters because undeclared AI use can be treated as an academic integrity issue. When you want to get your research published, you need to understand the rules that publishers apply on the use of AI. Policies can vary and they're still evolving. You should always check the guidance for your target journal. But most major publisher policies share some basic principles. AI can't be an author. Authorship requires responsibility, accountability, and intellectual contribution. AI tools can't take responsibility for the work. Authors remain responsible for the accuracy, originality, and integrity. Many publishers allow AI tools for language editing, grammar, readability, and similar support tasks, but the scientific content, ideas, results, analysis, interpretation, and conclusions, they must remain under human control. AI use may need to be disclosed. The details vary, so don't assume that one rule applies everywhere. But the practical message is use AI only in ways that you can explain, defend, and disclose. Also want to give a very practical warning of be careful what you put into an AI tool. Don't put sensitive research material into public AI tools unless your university, supervisor, or project has confirmed that the tool is approved for that purpose. It includes personal data, unpublished research data, confidential project information, third-party data, material under confidentiality agreements, manuscripts under review, and sensitive commercial and clinical information. When it comes to PhD students, many of you would be working with unpublished data, collaborative projects, industry partners, clinical material, lab results, and draft manuscripts. So it's really important to bear this in mind. And if you paste confidential or unpublished material into a public AI tool, you can lose control of where it's stored, where it goes, how the AI tool itself uses it. So before using AI with research material, ask, is it public information? Do I have permission to use it in this tool? Does the tool protect confidentiality? And would my supervisor, ethics committee, or project partner be comfortable with this? If you're unsure, don't paste it. Here is a very quick decision framework. So before using an AI tool, ask yourself, am I using it to support my work or replace it? Have I supplied the facts, evidence, and interpretation, or am I asking the AI to do it for me? Can I verify every claim? Have I protected confidential material? Will I disclose this use if required? Would I be comfortable explaining this to my supervisor, examiner, or journal editor? And that last question is often the most useful, because if you think you'd be uncomfortable explaining your AI use openly, pause. That's probably a sign that the use is risky, unclear, or outside the rules. You don't need to be afraid of using an AI tool, but you do need to be able to just explain how and why you used it. I'm going to close with the main message. AI is a very useful assistant. It can help you to explore ideas, generate starting points, refine your language, check your structure, improve your clarity. But your thesis, your literature review, your abstract, your publications must still reflect your judgment, your evidence, your interpretation, and your voice. Use AI to support you. Use vetted resources for evidence, and use your own scholarly judgment for meaning. The strongest approach is not to reject AI, and it's not to rely on it blindly. It's use the right tool for the right job. AI can help you work more efficiently, but it can't replace the intellectual responsibility that makes the work yours. And we feel it's really important to normalise two ideas. First, AI is part of the landscape now, but second, evidence still rules. Whether you're in academia, industry, or government, AI literacy is really essential for effective research. Thank you very much, everybody.